And so let's be inspired by Sean Prentiss, affiliated with Norwich University, and some poetry. Author of Finding Abbey, The Search for Edward Abbey and His Hidden Desert Grave, which won the National Outdoor Book Award. Also written crosscut poems and co-written 2 textbooks, Environmental and Nature Writing and Advanced Creative Nonfiction. He's co-editor of The Science of Story, The Brain Behind Creative Nonfiction, and he's currently a professor at Norwich University. And I'm going to have you
Thank you, David.
start up. Thank you very much. Round of applause.
So, a couple of things related to the last talk. The first one is I just gave a poetry reading in Fitchburg. I'd never been there before, so that was wonderful. And then I am going to take you to Woodbury Mountain and explain how my backyard got preserved. And it was a lot easier than what you did. So your work was great, and I just got really, really lucky. So my name is Sean Prentiss. Those are my some of my books up there. I have what are called broadsides of poems, and they're over here. So if afterwards you want a broadside, feel free to take one. My books are for sale at the bookstore, and that's my wife and daughter, and that's my home and Woodbury Mountain right behind it. There's a bunch of paintings. They're all done by my father-in-law, Richard Hingston. If you were to go through that gap, you'd end up in Hardwick. And if you were to go south down the mountain, you'd end up in Montpelier, about 25 minutes away. So that's a painting of our home right there. Woodbury Mountain has maybe no old growth forests. I just talked to a guy named Jason who found some very old trees. So maybe it does. So these poems are going to be talking about future old growth. Here's the intro to the book. It's a finished book, more or less. I'm going to send it to a publisher soon. The big idea is that I got asked by Northeast Wilderness Trust to write some poems when the mountain was conserved and preserved. And it just happened out of the blue that my backyard got 6,000 acres preserved, all by Northeast Wilderness Trust. I was really ecstatic. So I wrote a poem, and then I wrote another poem, and then I wrote another. And now I have a book of poems. And I'm going to hopefully take you to Woodbury Mountain. You'll see the poems up on the slide. This one's too long, so I'll start. The idea here is that if people ask, tell me about Woodbury Mountain, a lot of times they want to know what it looks like. They want to know what it would look like on a map. And I don't want you to see it just that way. I think it's much more than that. So the if I must is, all right, here's what it is, but it's really a different sort of map. So this is in the beginning of the book, which begins right after it was preserved. If I must, Woodbury's ridge runs south to north. If I must, Woodbury Mountain rises and falls and rises a slow serpentine. If I must, imagine an ocean on a calm crashing. If I must, a few skid roads, mostly vanished, come summer to nettles and ferns and a few paved roads besides its lower contours. If I must, a gentle peak shrouded below tree line today under a drapery of snow, never expansive views to Ropes and Worcester Mountains or Cabot Plains. If I must, the most shocking feature, the North Ridge whittled out by the carve and cut of glacier 10,000 years ago, which to Woodbury Mountain is our yesterday or noon today. If you gaze from Greenborough's height of land at Woodbury Mountain, that gulf stolen might almost steal your breath, transform it into breeze. Ifs, ifs, ifs. Mountains have never once dreamed in ifs, so please, lean in closer. I'll hush how Woodbury Mountain's creeks surge come spring, dry during summer, return in autumn. Let me draw a map on your palm with April's mud. Smell it, taste this mountain on tongue. Lick the sleep of generations of trees and plants fallen to rot. Better still, kneel into this soft and green bed of ramps, chew the sting of nettles. But if I must, I will draw a map upon lined paper. If I must, the ridge runs north to south, always below tree line. But instead, of pen on paper. Put on boots and jacket and enter December's wind. Feel it against your cheek. See little but the embrace of winter. Trudge higher into nothingness, into 2 feet of snow and rising into less than an emptiness that swirls and swallows and leaves us snowblind and searching. Within that blizzard, we might finally contour a true map. Within this all, draw wild with me. Let us throw down pens, let papers flutter into wind like December's snow. So that's Woodbury Mountain. Well, thank you. This is one of the first poems I wrote. This was published by the Northeast Wilderness Trust, and I'm so thankful for what they've done to save our mountain. And this looks at the history and how we've hurt the mountain. It's an apology, but it's also about tomorrow's hope and now that Woodbury Mountain is protected. This mid-December night ends as the cold moon lowers itself behind the broad shoulder of Woodbury Mountain, garland in a gossamer snow sawing into the night. It is winter and night, which means a meandering of thoughts until I end up thinking about those settlers who cross-cut this mountain's old growth, sheep who chawed long grasses that wavered in the winds, loggers who harvested second growth my Joneser red that screamed upon these slopes. Only now, beneath this moon, beneath the soon-to-rise sun, does this 200-year violence end. As of this coming morning, Woodbury Mountain returns itself to self-will, allowed to remember deep within the bones of its rock what it was before we tried to corral it in roads. It can dream into whatever it next becomes outside our touch. I whisper, sorry, sorry, into darkness. I am whispering to this mountain, I whisper goodbye. I am whispering into this failing night and into so many yesterdays. I whisper good morning. I am praying to the sun soon to arise to a new beginning. I wish these whispers were chants. I just changed that ending about 10 minutes ago, but I didn't read you the new ending, so it's got a new ending. I forgot to change it up here, so you get the old one. All right, this one's called Natural Climate Solution, also published by Northeast Wilderness Trust on their website. And humans, all of you, I'm just a writing professor. You work really hard to solve environmental problems. Thank you. So many of us, we cause those problems. This poem highlights the power of old growth forests and how sometimes it's best if we just step back and let nature be its wild self. It's called Natural Climate Solution. The maturing forests of Woodbury Mountain clutch 500,000 tons of carbon within heartwood, otherwise to be chainsawed back into our atmosphere if we vision only in log length. With this forest fostered into eternal wild, we allow another 600,000 tons of carbon to be inhaled by these aging forests, a natural climate solution, requiring little more than for you and me to step back, do little other than hike this peak or forget about it entirely. We can forget all about calculations and equations, diameter, breast height, basal area, trees per acre, merchantable tree height, and board feet volume, and allow this mountain, these trees, to age into old growth, to become what they were born to become, arms stretching towards sun, later shattering into trees' embrace. This poem was published in 2 spots, Northeast Wilderness Trust and Writing the Land Channels, which is writing for land trusts and preserved lands. And once Woodbury Mountain got protected in 2021, I started thinking about the mountain in a very different light. I originally thought of it as a neighbor, a community member, but one in peril. And once it was protected, I could think of it as an elder growing older much more safely, as an old growth mountain. And still, this morning, as with every morning, our sun settles its rays gently upon the crest of Woodbury Mountain. This morning, as with every morning, our sun slowly pours itself upon the lower slopes and rock faces of Woodbury Mountain. This morning, as with every morning, our sun unspools itself upon the valley floor and migrates east until it reaches this house where I am finally illuminated in late sunlight. All of this happens this morning and every morning and will continue until I am buried nearby, until this house crumbles into earth, until these white pines and sugar maples tumble home and decompose, until this mountain range, already half a giga-annum old and weary, erodes itself into prairie, and still our sun this morning, as with every future morning, will shine upon Woodbury Mountain Wilderness Preserve. I like to think about nature a lot, but I also want to think about the humans that are involved in this wild process, how we interact with our homeland. We're not just humans, we're wild nature. That's my daughter, Winter. That's my wife, Sarah. I've got my water bottle up here that says, "Keep Winter Wild." She's a very wild girl. This is published in Writing the Lands, and it's about hiking on our mountain. While shoving through saplings, halfway through our hike, our daughter says, "You should write a poem about this mountain." Our daughter, Sarah, and I, we have forded 2 creeks tumbling to our lake below. We've knelt beside Dutchman's breeches, painted trilliums and wild ginger. We've snacked sitting upon dead and down beside the wind chimes of a creek. When I ask what the poem should be about, our little girl says the mountain or wildlife, maybe a poem about a bear or deer or flowers. Yes, little girl. This poem is to the creek that roils and seethes downward, the doe who mud-etched her prints, bears yawning from hibernation, ephemerals fading to the root, maple leaves breaking from buds, and you, little girl, the wildest thing your mother and I ever created. Well, thanks. I got a good family. They tolerate a lot with me. All right, this one's fluency. I think I just have 2 left. And this is about how I wish Woodbury Mountain could be here and be reading its own poems. I don't know that that would work well for Bread Loaf, but it would work well for poems, and it would do a much better, more wild job than I can. This is called Fluency. I wish I was fluent with the languages of this range. I cannot even hear most of this mountain's conversation, though I understand its warbles and leaves stretching towards sun, roots knuckling into soil, rocks fissuring and fracturing from the cleave of winter's ice, its geological rise and fall. I can only offer these human words, no matter how much they fail. I wish these words were more mountainous. All right. This one's not in here for some reason, and I can't see it up here, so I'm going to read it this way. Aging Tree in Sunlight. This is one of the first poems I wrote for the book. This goes back to natural climate solution and what happens after. Branches of an old maple grab towards dawn, which glistens upon August spark. It is a dream to know this maple will stretch for the suns of all seasons till it ages, withers, weakens, just as I am doing. It and I, we will die here in the place of our roots. Let us die the way we are meant to, rootstock rotting, bodies decomposing into the soils of our home. And that was published by Writing the Land as well. This is my last poem. And the poem or the book wrestles a lot with this idea that Woodbury Mountain is a mountain, duh. But it's also a living ecosystem. It's also a part of our community. It's also our guardian, and it's so much more. This is called Wind's Cry. Thanks for listening. And as a reminder, there's free poems. They're called broadsides. There's like 10, 20 different poems. You can choose one you want or 2. Wind's Cry. West winds gush gloom over rounded spines, swirling mist over ridges, tumbling towards waiting lake. Bluster through last leaves, rustling beech leaves like cheap bells. Finger around balsam fir needles, twist the spindly conifers into sways and thrashing, course alongside vernal streams built from October's torrent heaving downward, launching from ledges, rocks dislodged, trembling through woods, a branch cracks in the gusts, a raven caws, the west winds cry. This mountain is alive. Thanks so much.